matter to me? Hang on a sec. What if that doesn't matter to me? What if the group of people who will find that objectionable are not the entirety of society, and I can just go somewhere else and carry on operating?
Well, give me a specific example of what you would want to do that would be bad that you think you could get away with or would want to be able to get away with.
It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, there will be no laws. So, I mean,
well,
why?
It does matter what it is. I mean, it does. Absolutely.
Okay, but who decides what's right? Who decides what's illegal and what's not?
Well, you decide based on what you agree to. So basically, right now, like if you go and if you go apply for a job, right, you have to provide a driver's license that identifies you and allows your employer to run a government, it's okay, whatever background check to say you're not a wanted criminal. What you'd have in a market system would be a better system of accountability, where in order for you to do business with someone, you would have to sign up to say, I have agreed to this, insurance system or to this dispute resolution organization system or whatever the market demands for you to be able to do business with me. But that mechanism that we see provided for by government and we kind of take for granted, it's very easy for the market to replicate that in a much.
Okay. Hang on a second. Let's not rush off, because, I mean, how are you going to stop me from just doing any kind of transaction with another person without following these rules?
How am I going to stop you from doing a transaction? I don't want to stop you from doing a transaction. That's the point. What do you mean?
Well, then that renders your system irrelevant, because however you plan it for you personally, if I don't buy into that and someone else doesn't buy into that, then you become irrelevant as we continue trading without you.
Well, of course, you can trade, and I can choose to opt out of your trade system, or I can opt into your trade system and play by your rules. I would have that choice.
Sure, but we now need a codified method of guaranteeing contracts. Who's going to guarantee the contract between us?
Right. The same thing I described before is that you would have an insurance company or a dispute resolution organization that you would have to sign on to.
Okay, but what if we didn't sign on to it?
Well, then you can do business without it. I mean, like, look,
I don't agree. I think that
assuming a standard of government perfection here, and one of the things that we see that's so destructive about government having a monopoly on justice services is that they're very limited. It is that, like, I'll give an example. This is like going back to when I was in college, right? I had a motorcycle stolen from in front of my dorm. When I got back from Iraq, that was my deployment toy. And I was like, big treat for myself. And it got stolen. This guy cut the straps off the helmet with a razor blade, jacked the ignition with a screwdriver, ran off, and had his girlfriend got caught with her on the back on a high-speed chase on the freeway. The bike got trashed. I had to go pick it up, and I went to court, and I got a judgment for restitution against this guy. The government said, yeah, this guy owes you the damages to this motorcycle, and this is going to go on his criminal record. And the guy went to jail. The government spent tens of thousands of dollars, at least, housing and dealing with him. And the few thousand that I was owed, instead of me getting that from the people who are supposed to serve me in terms of justice, they tax me more to pay for his housing and pay for all the services that he receives now as an ex-prisoner. That's absolutely backwards. The system that I'm talking about is one that's based on making people whole when victims are created by actual material crimes. That's something that we just don't have under this government system. It's a very terrible approximation. It's because we don't have that accountability. When markets are able to provide accountability for those basic services, we're going to have way better services in every regard.
I don't agree. And I don't think there's any way you can compel people to follow any of this. And if people aren't compelled to follow any of this, then why should they listen to you?
Well, what do you mean by compel? This gets down to the ethical.
Okay. You want to let me explain. You just asked a question. I'll explain.
Well, I want to point out the difference here. Because I don't want to compel anybody to do anything.
Well, then you can't run a civilization then.
Well, if you mean compel by incentive, then I'm with you. If you mean
sometimes there has to be compulsion. Like with the chap who stole your motorbike, he's not just going to bring it back, is he? He has to be compelled to relinquish the motorbike.
Right. So in that sense, the system that I'm advocating is capable of using force in the sense of restorative justice. If you mean that there's someone who's an immediate threat or there's stolen property that needs to be returned, absolutely.
Okay, but
and we'd have that too more efficiently than the government. I'm not saying that the system would have no coercion or compulsion at all, but that compulsion would still have to be in accordance with the natural law. So you wouldn't be compelling anyone to do anything unless they've already committed a crime.
Yeah, but
or in the
who
process
defines what a crime is?
basically the
defines what a
natural
crime is?
law. The natural law is the standard, and that's what we're
Yeah, but
achieving.
what if I don't agree with natural law?
Well, then only people who want to do business with you will do business with you, and that's fine. You don't have to agree. That's the best part of this. You don't have to agree on everything. You can have your own.
Okay, hang on a second. Let's talk this through seriously, right? Because, like, if I don't believe in property rights, say I'm a socialist, and I just go along and I find a motorbike, I like it, I take it, and someone comes and says, well, hey, that motorbike belongs to someone else, I'll say, well, I don't recognize your jurisdiction, I don't recognize your authority, I don't care about your opinion on the concept of private property, and I'm currently sat on this motorbike. Now you have to make me relinquish it. Where does the authority come from to make them relinquish it?
Well, so there's an important balance to be struck here that the market is capable of providing that the government cannot. And that's, is it worth using force to go after someone? Is it in the best interest of justice? Is it worth the cost? And I trust the market. I trust people interacting voluntarily to figure out what that balance is better than government. So let's say it's a stolen motorcycle.
Hang on. Let's not go off another tangent. Hang on a sec. Come on.
Let me bring it back to that example.
No, but you've made your point, man. Come on. So
hold on 1 second.
You trust the market to be able to get your motorbike back?
If I have an insurance company that is responsible for protecting my property, or that has some agreement with me to provide a certain service, and if my property is stolen, they're responsible for making me whole, but they get the claim to that property. It's up to them to decide if they want to reclaim it by force, as long as I'm made whole in accordance with that service contract.
Okay. And on what authority do they have to take back something that is assumed to be stolen by force?
If someone steals your wallet and you chase him down the street and you take your wallet back, what authority do you need to take your wallet back?
Well, because the person's actually broken a law.
Well, he's stolen your property, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so you're saying that if someone steals your wallet, you need a law on file somewhere with an authority in order for you to go and tackle him and take your wallet back?
Oh no. I could operate under the law of the jungle. Obviously, I could. If I'm capable.
Well, that's not the law of the jungle. You said he committed a crime.
Look, if I'm capable of catching him and overpowering him, then sure, I have the physical capacity to take my wallet back. But if I'm not, and I imagine that most people are probably not stronger than the criminals who rob from them, then I can't get my property back unless there is a third-party governmental-style institution that is capable of tracking this guy down without my presence, returning my property, and then punishing the criminal to make sure that other people realize that there are punishments for doing this. And that's, I think, a necessary part of having a civilization with private property. So the question is, from where does the legitimacy derive for whoever has to do that?
Well, if you were capable of picking up your own wallet, what's your authority from that?
Because it was mine and I can physically take it. It's the law of the jungle. Might makes right.
No, that's not. Well, see, you're doing it based on a legitimate property claim, so it's not law of the jungle because you don't have.
I'm doing it because I'm stronger than the guy.
Well, but you don't have. But you're not going around and taking other people's wallets. You're taking your wallet back. You're restoring.
Yeah, but if I realized that I'm the strongest guy around, I could just go around and take other people's stuff, couldn't I?
Well, no, because there would be mechanisms of accountability for that would be better than what we have under government today. So no, absolutely not.
I don't think they would. In fact, this is something that happened in the 10th century in Norway, where you would have this kind of right of challenge where you would walk up to someone who owned a farm and is married, owned a farm, and they would challenge them to fight for what they owned. And if they were slain, then they took their wife, their family, their farm, all their property, and it was completely legal. And it had to be outlawed. Because obviously you got some guys who were really good at fighting and they started amassing a lot of property pretty unjustly. So I don't think that is a better mechanism than a government.
Like royalty did. Like governments have.
Yeah, like feudal
governments don't like. Your example is one where governments don't like competition. Don't steal. The government hates competition. It
wasn't the government. It was the King of Norway, and that was under demand from his own citizens.
Right, because other people were getting in on his game.
No, the subjects of the king were being murdered and having their property stolen and their family stolen. So they demanded the king impose some kind of law and order and prevent this kind of blood rights. Well, I can't even remember the name of it now, but prevented that from happening.
My point was, normally that's what governments do. That's how kings became kings.
Yeah, that's the point of them. Yeah, someone needs to be the font of law and order.
Eventually, we don't need that.
Well, I mean, it's possible at some point in the far future that there won't be crimes, maybe, but I find it highly unlikely. And I mean, at the end of the day, you're always going to get people who commit crimes, or what we consider to be crimes, for reasons that aren't about property. And normally the communist argument is, well, no one has any private property. When we're post-scarcity, it won't matter, because what we need laws for. But I don't think that's going to be the only reason that people commit crimes. I mean, like, how are they going to prevent an Elliot Rodger from going on a killing rampage? Or what are they going to do about it when he does,
Well, this gets to a little bit to the nature of human progress. I mean, if you want to get into that side of it, although I don't know if our hosts have anything that they'd like to intervene with. And I know,
this is thrilling. You guys are doing just fine.
We're just listening at this point.
You guys are doing just fine.
All right. Well, I mean, I kind of want to put Carl on the spot here and turn it back around and say what I'm advocating for is the realization of the natural trend of human progress, where crime does become less likely, as you agreed to that basic academic observation that human violence is on the decline, that we get more harmonious, we get more prosperous, there is less crime over time. Part of it is there is less want, but all of the incentives for violence and crime decrease over time as humanity gets more capable. And if what you're advocating,
what are you asking me to explain here exactly?
Well, how is it beneficiary to humanity to say, let's entrench an authority that has a monopoly on violence in order to achieve a more harmonious society?
Because it removes the legitimacy from us doing violence to one another.
By creating legitimacy for its own violence? See, what I'm talking about is so you're saying your objective here, I think you're agreeing with me on this, is that the objective here is to, as a society, delegitimize violence, correct?
No, violence will always be the final factor in any kind of conflict. Always. There's no greater factor. It will always be the last one. The problem with violence is that it hurts people. It's dangerous. It's something most people don't want to have to experience in their daily lives. So we have to find a way of managing this. We can't pretend it's not a part of the human experience, because it is. So what can we do about it? And it seems the best solution is to invest a sovereign with the monopoly on force. And then you say, well, that's a king. It's like, yeah, it is. So what we need to do is find ways of keeping that accountable. So we actually go to democracy. And that means that we can create a massive bourgeois society with a state that is actually remarkably small. And this prevents most people from doing violence to one another, because they know at the end of the day, no matter what they do, there is a state that is invested with the power and has the resources to track down any one individual or group of individuals and subdue them.
So you're going back. This is the fundamental difference. You're going back to a specific service provided by government that I'm saying would be better provided by the free market.
I really don't think it will. But the reason that the government is a unique legal incorporation is because it's coercive and has a monopoly on force in a certain geographical area, as you described at the beginning. The way that this has legitimacy is that it is directly accountable to the people that it rules over. Your mercenary company. Hang on. Your mercenary company is not accountable to me, and so I would not recognize the authority of that mercenary company. So if they came and said, well, Adam Kokesh alleges that you beat up his brother or something, I would just be like, well, get bent and then pull out a gun. I'd be like, what are you going to do about it? And they would have to come with a remarkable amount of force, because you assume that everyone's going to expect that kind of reaction. So, I mean, you would turn into some kind of Mad Max style world. It would be terrible.
Well, first of all, it's really the opposite, in that you would have greater disincentives for crime because you'd have greater accountability for all sorts of petty crimes. But this is the main thing now. Again, I think where you're out of touch with just the basic reality of what the difference is between government and the free market, where you say that a government, a sovereign